Right now, she has not come out and directly said, I think Israel had a hand in it. What she has pointed out is that irrefutable evidence that Charlie had a break with Israel, starting back last June, where he went and strongly opposed the United States getting involved with Israel's attack on Iran. Then there was the bullying attempt in August, where a billionaire like Bill Ackman, reportedly, and this was again confirmed not just by Candace, but by Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly, that Charlie had come under enormous pressure to basically be a conduit for money from Israel, and he refused. And then, just a few weeks after that, he's dead. Coincidence? Yeah, maybe. What bothers me about the entire affair is it doesn't make operational sense. In other words, if I'm going to assassinate somebody, I need to know where they're going to be at a certain time. I need to know what that surrounding area is like. How do I get access? Is there a place where I can go and hide? Nobody will see me and I can get a shot off. What's the distance from where I'm going to be shooting to where the person is sitting? Because with distance matters with rifles. Well, with any firearm for that matter. But you have to be able to do what's called zeroing your firearm. In other words, that when the crosshairs, as you look through the optic, and the crosshairs are aligned on what you intend to shoot, that in fact the bullet will go where the crosshairs are. And there are ways that you have adjustments on the scopes that will adjust for up and down and will adjust from right to left. So all of that has to be planned for in advance. And you say, okay, I'm going to take a 140-yard shot. Well, you need to make sure that rifle has been zeroed for at least 100. And then how do you escape? And why do you escape in a different way than you came in? If you walk up the stairs, why go jumping off a roof? Particularly if there was nobody guarding the stairs. And how do you find that sniper's perch when you've never visited the school before? And then we get the response, the Arms Tobacco Firearms report, that they couldn't match a fragment of the bullet to the firearm. But you go, fragment? Where the hell's the rest of the bullet? The rest of that bullet should have been in his body. Now, if it disintegrated into lots of different pieces, that's what's known as a frangible round. So where did those go? So did they pick them all out of his body or not? Because there certainly was not an exit wound.
Is there an explanation for it?
No, none at all yet. None at all. So I think Tyler Robinson's lawyer, if they're at all competent, will get him off. They'll be able to raise so many reasonable doubts, and the government's not going to be able to explain, why. But this was a professional hit on Charlie, and I believed it was related to the fact that he was strong. He along with Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly has started turning against Israel. And Israel wasn't going, the Zionists weren't going to allow that. You recall it was in mid-July that he hosted a debate at the TPUSA convention in Tampa. And Dave Smith, the comedian, was was speaking, basically against the genocide in Palestine. And Josh Hammer, a reporter for, I guess, Newsweek, was taking the other side. And Hammer was reportedly at that meeting in August that took place out on Long Island, where Charlie was being severely pressured to basically serve the interests of Israel, and he refused. And then 3 weeks later, he's dead. So, yeah, coincidence? Like I said, maybe. But I'm not a strong believer in coincidence.
Yeah, I was also under the impression, I still am, that it's a coincidence. But I start to doubt it a lot when people like Joe Kent, for example, come to me and they tell me, Mario, I think that I wouldn't be surprised if the president is under duress. I think I told you that before. Joe Kent said to me, and that really caught me by surprise. He's like, I wouldn't be surprised if the president and his family fear for their life. And I was just telling the audience when you cut out, I was like, think about it. Trump never ceases to bring up anything that helps him politically, including the 2020 election that keeps calling stolen. He keeps bringing that up. Why doesn't he bring up the fact that he was almost shot in the head? When do you ever hear him mention that? Yeah. That would be one of the biggest badges of honor. Never even references it. That is so bizarre, so unusual.
Correct. Yeah, no, it's Joe Kent made the same argument yesterday with Danny Davis. So, it's not just saying it to you, he's saying it to other people. And that he thinks that, that they are threatening Trump. And that because Trump would really like to make this deal with Iran. But if he makes the deal with Iran, that's going to sink Israel. And Israel's not going to put up with that for a minute. At least, these hardcore Zionists. There's a way that Israel would survive out of this, but they're not going to survive on the terms that the Zionists demand. So it's to that extent, you can say that, is Trump being threatened? Maybe.
Yeah, and there's, as you know very well, there's a lot of powers that within the American establishment, Israel being one of them. I think one area that is not getting enough attention is the military-industrial complex. That is just printing money through all these wars. And it's become unsexy to talk about it, especially after October 7th. It was great to bring up the attention on Israeli influence in the US for the sake of the US. That's really good news. But no one talks about that lobbying group. No one talks about big oil and how they're benefiting from all this. Yeah.
Well, if you look, I was going to say, if you have a chance, Kevin Walmsley, who does a fairly regular posting once a day, once every 2 days, called Inside China Business. He did an excellent piece yesterday. I mean, he always does good pieces, but the piece yesterday where he went down the list of rare earth minerals and the minerals and those rare earth minerals that are required to produce Tomahawks, PAC-3s, JASSMs, etc. And, basically making the case that the United States has run out of weapons and doesn't have any way to rebuild them in the foreseeable future.
Is that Kevin Walmsley from
Walmsley.
Nipissing University?
WAMS.
Walmsley?
He's out of, it's called Inside China Business.
Oh, you told me about him once. Yeah. I'll make sure I bring him on the show. There was someone else you mentioned to me before. We already invited him. I think he's being scheduled in. I think he's the one that talks about
Alex White, I think, of Reportify.
It could be, yeah. It could be. I saw his name earlier today. One more question on that topic before we go to the news of the day is which lobbying group do you think that has the most influence in the US government?
Oh, AIPAC, hands down.
So pro-Israeli lobbying groups.
Oh, yes. Yeah, there's nobody else that matches them in terms of money or influence and messaging. Yeah, but what's interesting, the guys I was training today, they're age, 42 to 46. So nobody over the age of 50. And this whole topic came up about U.S. support for Israel and Israeli meddling in U.S. society. And, both these guys, I call them young guys, they're your age. You're a young guy compared to me. The support for Israel is evaporating under 50 crowd evaporating. And the more Israel proceeds with these killings of women and children, and the social media reports that, no matter how much Israel tries to suppress it, the more their support erodes here in the United States. So it was pretty fascinating listening. They brought it up. I didn't. Because, when I'm I don't talk politics when I'm teaching. I keep that aside. But after the class was over and done with, one of them said, "Hey, do you mind if I ask you a question?" I said, "Sure." And then off we went into this discussion.
Yeah. But that's why it kind of links to the legislation they're trying to push that allows them access to the unprecedented access to American military and all the classified information. Because once they have that level of access, first, reversing it is very difficult. And second, once you have that classified information, you have it. You can't just
Yeah.
confiscate it again. So it's really concerning. And Karen, I was talking to Karen earlier. She did a piece on it. She says, Mario, she believes the whole attacks on Thomas Massie, the reason they spent so much money on him is he could stand in the way of something like this. And same as the attacks on Marjorie Taylor Greene when she resigned, and others as well, is to make sure there's no resistance to passing this law, because it's become so important, even existential for Israel.
Right.
Well, talking about Israel, there's the main focus of what's happening in Iran right now. So Iran has drawn a very clear line saying, hey, a war in Lebanon will break the ceasefire. Well, today reports came out that Israel's trying to get authorization to expand the war in Lebanon. As you know, they've captured a hill with a castle in South Lebanon, the first time they captured it since 2000. But they're also facing significant casualties because of Hezbollah's drone warfare.
Right.
So now they've asked permission to be able to expand the operations. The I-24 says senior Israeli officials have asked senior American officials to allow expansion of strikes in Beirut. Channel 12 then reported the Trump administration is showing greater openness towards the expansion. I just closed it now. Towards the expansion. Let me open up. There it is. Okay. Inside Lebanon, to include Beirut as well. Netanyahu convened the senior security officials, IDF representatives, etc., to discuss a plan for a significant expansion of the fighting in Lebanon, including Operation Beirut, that Israel says is largely avoided because of American resistance. Khan News reports U.S. officials confirmed the Trump administration is working on a proposal for a comprehensive ceasefire in Lebanon, a move linked to both the ongoing talks with Iran. And while the U.S. is doing this, there's preparations on the Israeli side to try to offer a counter-proposal and convince the Americans to exclude Lebanon from these operations. So this is all happening while Iran is printing money. Iran is charging a fee at the Strait of Hormuz. Ships are paying $2 million a pop. They made over $1.5 billion since the ceasefire on the Strait of Hormuz, charging the fee for the ships. And today the Iranian parliament is passing a law to reaffirm Iranian sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. They even said, the speaker of the parliament or whatever, and he said that the Americans keep telling us to open up the Strait of Hormuz. What the Americans need to know, this is not their territory to dictate. So for the Iranians, it seems the Strait of Hormuz is a done deal. Like there's nothing to negotiate there whatsoever. There is back and forth on I'll go through the updates later, on the unfreezing of assets, etc. Trump is sending a counter proposal now to Iran that's more demanding than previous proposals. I don't know what the strategy is there. But my biggest worry is Lebanon. What's your take on that? Do you think that could sabotage the negotiations that are ongoing right now? And there's one more here. Lebanese media, the recent Israeli operation is part of a strategy aimed at cutting supply lines linking the Bekaa Valley, which is, I think, it borders Syria, if I'm not wrong, with southern Lebanon, as this is the network that allows Hezbollah to rearm southern Lebanon. This is the update that came in from MTV, Lebanese news outlets. I'd love to get your take on it. Yeah,
it's not just through Syria. I mean, heavens, you got these smuggling routes that run east-west. And they run through the Bekaa Valley for decades, if not centuries. Actually, the trading routes run centuries, so nobody should have been surprised that Hezbollah was easily rearmed, re-equipped with weapons smuggled in from the east, from China, from Russia, going through China, from Pakistan. So this is. This is deja vu all over again, to quote Yogi Berra, because, Israel went in back in 75 and 82, and they go in and they create mayhem and they do killing and do destruction and then pull out. Or if they try to leave a stay-behind force, that force ultimately becomes a target of attacks and is usually destroyed. They have to abandon the location. So this is what's the definition of insanity, supposedly? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. This is why we can call this legitimately insane.
There's a report by Ynet, I think. Israel has fallen into a trap of its own making in Lebanon, with the Litani River crossing providing a dramatic headline, but no clear exit strategy, leaving the IDF entangled as Hezbollah expands its rocket range and US-Iran talks threaten to pull the rug out from under the operation. according to an analysis by Ynet. So he talks about the Israeli military spread too thin, going deeper into Lebanon, but capturing that territory just makes them more susceptible to attacks, drone attacks by Hezbollah. And Hezbollah is pummeling Israel as well with rockets. But I spoke to Conrick, as former IDF spokesperson, earlier today, and he made the argument, kind of put it into perspective, going all the way back to October 7th. He's like, yes, Mario, look, you could talk about Hezbollah's successes now as a win. You could talk about Iran getting the concessions from the US and not addressing the ballistic missile as a win. But he's like, if you go back to October 7th, back then, Hezbollah had significantly more missiles and rockets. Everyone thought a war between Israel and Hezbollah would be unthinkable. Hezbollah would be able to strike Tel Aviv. Iran had a significantly stronger missile program that could have caused havoc in Israel if there was ever a war. Assad wasn't
Iran did?
He said Iran could have caused a lot more havoc in Israel. And the perception back then was Iran's capabilities could have destroyed Israel a lot more than they did. He's saying, yes, there are certain wins that we're seeing right now. Iran survived the bombing. Hezbollah is able to inflict a lot of damage. But they're all significantly weakened from what they were before. Hezbollah lost their leader. Iran lost their leader. The Houthis, I don't know if they lost their leader. Syria, Assad, the leader's gone. So, and Hamas is a lot weaker than what it was. So if you put all these things together, the axis of resistance has never been weaker. While they haven't lost, they've also the weakest they've ever been. That's the argument he was making for me.
And Israel's stronger, is that his argument?
I didn't think he said that, but I'm sure. He probably would be saying that to me. He's saying Israel's alliance with the US stronger than ever. I'm paraphrasing here or putting words in his mouth a bit, but I think this is what he would believe, and that the Israeli military is able to achieve incredible successes and prove its capabilities as well, with the pager attack as an example, and the intelligence gathering when it came to the strikes in Iran.
Right.
And he believes that the alliance with the Gulf with the UAE is an example of Israeli influence in the region, expanding into 2 bases in Iraq as well.
And what has that accomplished? Has it brought Israel more peace? Has it brought Israel more security? No. And who was begging Trump for the ceasefire in April? It was Israel, not Iran. Iran wasn't begging at all. It was, again, the U.S., Israel come, no, please, let's stop and put an end to this. And Iran goes along in part because of encouragement from the Chinese and because of its relationship with Pakistan. But in the last few days, Israel sent some very tough messages to D.C., and they'll filter their way down to the Emirates, the Saudis as well as the Qataris. The word's going to get out. I think you'll find something. It'll be with reference to Iran and its access to a nuclear weapon.
Robert Pine, Richard Pine, who was on the show. I've referenced him before.
David Pine. David Pine?
Yeah, David Pine. Yeah, I'm really bad with names, just a heads up. David Pine was telling me that he believes, and he said it to me on multiple occasions, that Iran already has nuclear weapons, nuclear warheads. Do you think that's a possibility?
It's possible, but I think under the old prohibition of Khamenei, they wouldn't do it. But they got friends in North Korea who has nukes, and they got friends in Pakistan who has nukes. So it's not out of the question to suggest that Pakistan and or North Korea have provided Iran with one or more nuclear weapons that they can use one in a demonstration just to put the West and Israel on notice. Hey, we got one now. Everything you were afraid of, we got one now. And if you force us, we'll use it. And that'll bring a whole change to this debate.
I think the North Korean nuclear warheads are being monitored by American intelligence 24/7. I think as soon as they take out any of their nuclear material or weapons or any nuclear bomb, I think there'd be action from the Americans relatively quickly. On the Pakistani part, they've got the alliance. You don't think so?
They got what?
So North Korean one, you don't think that will be the case? Because they can actually get a nuclear bomb and then ship it to Iran?
Yeah. No, I think it's entirely possible. But if anyone's going to provide it right now, I personally think it would be the Pakistanis.
Would the
Much
Saudis
more,
be okay with that? Because they've got a defense pact with the Pakistanis.
well, yeah, the Saudis would be okay with that because Pakistan has signed an agreement that gives Saudi Arabia nuclear devices as well, operated under the auspices of the Pakistanis, but nonetheless available to Saudi Arabia to use as it chooses. And I think, they're more likely to align themselves now with Iran than to align themselves with Israel.
Yeah, I just worry that it'll be suicidal for the Pakistani economy because the Pakistani economy, pretty fragile, still very dependent. There's been that rapprochement with the US while also maintaining relations with China. And they've got their own problems in Balochistan. There was that attack by the Baluchis as well. I don't know if the Pakistanis could afford to take such a step. I think the international community would not be happy about them offering a nuclear weapon to Iran. What about
but consider the fact, though, if they're doing it in collaboration with China, and if China's got their back, then it's a whole different ballgame.
The sleeping dragon wakes up.
Well, I may have news for you tomorrow on that whole front.
On the sleeping dragon waking up? Oh, because you have that connection in Pakistan that you've referenced a few times. Tell that connection of yours. That connection seems to be a troublemaker, Larry.
Hey, just for reporting the news, you get in trouble. They're not making the news. Well, in some aspects, Pakistan's making news because of the way that they're assisting the Saudis and Iranians to try to extricate themselves from this regional war.
You think it will expand to... If it does become a regional war, how would it escalate to that level? What would be the escalation process? Like what would it take for it to become like a worst case scenario regional war? I mean, involving there's already been a regional war, but I mean directly involving multiple countries in the region, Israel, Iran, the Gulf, maybe even Turkey. How could it get to that level? What should we be careful of?
Well, Israel's already talked about attacking Turkey, and the Turks have retaliated by saying, hey, we'll get you before you get us. And so if Turkey, Saudis, and Iran unite, bring a united front against Israel will be in trouble because, they can shut down a lot of the trade with Israel. They've been dependent upon their oil coming out of Turkey. It would further isolate Israel at a time where it needs less isolation, more relations with other countries.
Yeah, the risky one as well when it comes to Turkey and Israel is Syria. I think this is where Israel's concerned and talking about Syria arming al-Shara, and Syria is also really upset with. Turkey's really upset with. So it's Turkey arming al-Shara, and Turkey's really upset with what Israel's done in Syria, the bombing that's constantly been happening there. So this is where the power struggle. So yeah, like if you look at it, what could lead to an escalation trap between Israel and Turkey would be Syria. What could lead to an escalation trap between Israel and Iran is Lebanon, and we're seeing that unfold in front of our eyes right now.
Right.
And obviously you've got the Gulf strained. I don't know how Egypt gets into this. Why is there rhetoric in Israel about Egypt now? Why is there concerns about Egypt? Where'd they come from?
Really you want another warm body in the boat. You're gonna, if you're going to hit a rocky shore, and you're afraid that the Americans and Brits, that they've got control of certain naval assets or others, that you want to have an alternative. That's all we're talking about. But this would look. I could see Pakistan right now it's not acting on its own. It's acting in concert with Saudi Arabia. And I am told that Friday evening, Saturday, the Pakistani foreign minister had a very direct conversation with Marco Rubio that was that Rubio would have found alarming, because it revealed what Iran is prepared to do to preserve its independence. Now, have I confirmed that to another source? Not yet. I'm trying to, but if what I was told is true, the United States is this. I think one of the reasons you're seeing even further delay in the United States doing anything to provoke Iran beyond what it has done.
So what that conversation could have been between Rubio and the Pakistani official. The Pakistani official was telling Rubio what Iran's willing to do if no deal is reached, or what Iran's willing to do if the US does A, B, C, X, Y, Z, or what Iran is willing to do if Israel continues their operations in Lebanon, something along those lines. But it indicates that Iran is a lot more aggressive, or a lot more, they've got escalation dominance, and they're willing to use it very aggressively to achieve their objectives. Is that the right way to interpret it?
Yeah. No, I think the window for Israel has narrowed and is narrowing, because the support from the United States is not expanding; it's actually contracting somewhat. And by contrast, Iran's options seem to be growing, not diminishing. And so not only has it rebuilt some of its own supplies, particularly with ballistic missiles and drones, but it's now reportedly getting advanced technical equipment out of China and out of Russia.
Yeah, I've seen those reports. Well, then how would you explain what Trump is doing? So according to the New York Times, Trump has toughened the terms of a potential framework deal with Iran and has sent a revised proposal back for consideration, according to 3 officials. The specific changes have not been disclosed, though Trump expressed concern over the provisions that would unfreeze Iranian funds. So according to New York Times, he responded with something more with tougher demands, focusing on the unfreezing of funds. And according to Axios, Trump responded with amendments to the Strait of Hormuz, on who controls the Strait of Hormuz, and seeking more nuclear concessions by Iran. So if you put the New York Times and Axios together, Trump is seeking more concessions on the Strait of Hormuz, more concessions on the nuclear program, and something to do with their unfreezing of assets. Obviously, he's not too happy with it.
I mean, he's asking for the surrender of Iran, and Iran's not going to surrender. Iran's made it clear that it sees its future as with the global South, not with the West. And it's important to remember that the West, even despite Trump's claims that the West is largely independent, we're energy independent. That is not true. We are actually dependent on global oil supply, heavy crude, in order to run diesel, the fuel for the trucks that keep America's economic lifeline flowing from coast to coast. And in the past, the United States got that out of Persian Gulf. It's not getting it now. It's got some coming out of Venezuela, but Venezuela can't produce at the level like the Saudis did. And the U.S. was getting a lot of that diesel out of the Saudis. So nonetheless, we've temporarily compensated for it, but that's why you now see like a $2 spread almost between the price of diesel, price of gasoline. Gasoline can be made from the light crude that comes out of the United States. So the United States has a surplus of light crude, and that gets exported to Europe where they turn it into gas, and we turn it into gas here. But the real bite's coming on the diesel front, and the United States it only now through Iraq has some access to oil that is appropriate for the refineries that need heavy crude in order to make diesel.
Well, these are reasons why I just don't think Trump will fold and will concede. This is one of the other many reasons. Like, he cannot afford it. And then you go back to, Zelensky said it well today. I'm sure you've seen his statements. He said, we are not seeing enough, in an interview with some, I can't remember, news outlet, American news outlet. He says, we are not seeing enough anti-ballistic missile production in the US, and this could lead to a crisis in different parts of the world, including the Middle East. I hope, God bless, that the ceasefire will be long and lasting peace. I wish it to the Middle Eastern countries and to the United States. I hope that Trump and his team on the American side will negotiate a ceasefire. We have to prepare for the challenges, and we, Ukraine, don't have a ceasefire. We have a long 5-year war. Russia's ramping up its internal production of ballistic missiles, and we have a deficit of anti-ballistic missile production. I sent a letter to the White House and to the US Congress. I hope they will understand and respond. 60 to 65 anti-ballistic missiles per month compared to current challenges is nothing. It is no secret, and Russia knows this. We need to expand the production. I asked the previous US administration, and I'm asking today's administration to give Ukraine licenses to produce Patriot missiles. We can increase the production of Patriot missiles. This will help us. This will help the Middle East and any country that the United States decides to help. The US has anti-ballistic systems. We are thankful for the US support, blah, blah, blah. We are thankful for the US support since the start of the war, and we are ready to share what we have with them of whatever they don't have. But until we produce a European anti-ballistic system, we need the support from the US. And to be honest, he's saying the truth. He's saying exactly what you and many others have warned about, is the production capacity in the US is in serious trouble. It's just not there. And the ceasefire is necessary, and it needs to be expanded. And Europe and Ukraine just don't have any other alternative either. And this is the reality that he has to deal with. And the US has to deal with, and the world has to deal with, and Japan and Taiwan and Europe all have to deal with.
Well, the bottom line, the fundamental challenge, is the United States doesn't hold any dominant economic cards. It's not like we have latent industrial capability that's lying dormant, just waiting for a few drops of water to be sprinkled on it, and then it springs into life. No, we don't have that. We got rid of it years ago. And the production of these weapon systems, both aircraft like the F-35 and the Tomahawk missile and the JASSM, and go down the list, they are all dependent upon a couple of rare earth minerals that China controls 100%.
Yeah.
And it's China that's going to determine whether the United States gets to develop or not. That's the challenge the U.S. faces
and
right
the production.
now.
That and the production capacity.
Yep.
Like the US now compared to World War II. World War II was 65% of global production. Now it's 15%. So it's the material and the production capacity to, even if they have the material, to be able to produce the volume that is needed.
Right. Yeah, which they don't. So they don't have the factory. They don't have the factory workers. And we don't have the resource.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I've heard talk about Belarus potentially joining the war. I haven't read much about it. And then the reason I'm asking it now, I've seen those reports in the last few days. And then Lukashenko said today, Ukraine will be insane to start any war with Belarus. I know this for sure because they understand that it's another 1,000 kilometers of front, a border. And it's not an easy border, the one between Belarus and Ukraine. Do they need that? No. So I don't think Ukraine is considering a war with Belarus whatsoever. That would be disastrous for Ukraine. Why is it that talk about Belarus joining the war? Is that a consideration?
Well, that's been on the table and threatened, for well over 4 years. I mean, you can go back and pull up Telegram videos of troop transports and tanks, Russian tanks, moving from Russia to Belarus. They've been very public about installing the Russian air defense system, I think the S-400. So they've got advantages that the United States doesn't. And you have to keep returning to this. The United States is making claims that they're going to start building this. With what? They don't have the raw materials. So yeah, they've promised to deliver X, Y, and Z. The average production each month is 60 for the PAC-3s. That's 720, and that's both the missiles that Russia's launching in Ukraine, and then what Iran is capable of launching in the Persian Gulf and Israel. The United States does not have enough to cover all of that. So what we're seeing is the collapse of the U.S. security umbrella. That's what's really going on.
Over the past week, Russia launched more than 2,300 drones, nearly 560 guided aerial bombs, and 108 missiles at Ukraine. That's in 1 week. Compare that to the volumes in Iran. It's
so again, if you're gonna, are you gonna use Iran drones to take out or I mean, are you gonna use the PAC-3 missiles to take out the Iran drones? And remember, you got to fire 2 for each drone. The same for the ballistic missiles. They said over 700, was it? Or so. I mean, the numbers just add up very quick. That it exhausts what the United States can supply. We just don't have it. And instead of dealing with that, so many commentators on this side of the ocean, they're just in a delusional state, claiming that they've got that Russia's suffering and Iran's suffering and the United States is doing just swell. Not the case. It is the exact opposite.
What do you think it would take for Ukraine to join the war? Sorry, Belarus to join the war. And is that probable now, or highly, highly unlikely it will happen?
I think it's unlikely at this point. If the NATO countries decide to attack Belarus, would Belarus then join in, and Russia would be immediately
or NATO attack Russia as well? Belarus would join in.
Yeah. But again, NATO doesn't have the ability to project much force. It's very much a paper tiger.
Well, there's an update here. Before I want to show you one last thing in Ukraine, get your thoughts on it. A piece came in on CNN. Before you show that, Lisa, just 2 seconds. Don't show it yet. The U.S. military just came in now. The U.S. military has been secretly shepherding commercial vessels through the Strait of Hormuz, with ships running dark to avoid Iranian detection, according to the New York Times. Around 70 vessels have made the crossing in recent weeks, averaging 3 ships per day. Before the war, more than 100 ships passed through there daily. The U.S. is not providing formal escort, with the Pentagon keeping its distance from any direct protection role. Quote, although U.S. forces are not accompanying, we continue to communicate and coordinate with commercial vessels. The operation exposes Washington's diminished position in the waterway. More than half of the 895 total crossings recorded are still using the route running close to the Iranian coast, indicating coordination with Iran. Iran, in other words, remains the dominant power in the Strait. The U.S. is sneaking 3 ships a day with the transponders off. So that just came in.
They sound like the 3 kids in high school who sneak out back behind the cafeteria to smoke cigarettes illegally. Yeah, a big difference. It's a nothing burger. That you're getting that 97% of what used to flow there isn't flowing. Hello, that's the number, not the 3%.